It was a hot March afternoon in New York City, one of those days when the heavy air seemed to amplify all tensions. Bus 2547 was making its way down Fifth Avenue, packed as usual at that hour. Among the passengers was a group of 5 college students: Lucas, the son of a well-known businessman; Marina, a rising social media influencer; Peter, recently accepted into medical school; Julia, an intern at a law firm; and Ryan, heir to a construction company. Dressed in designer clothes and carrying the latest model laptops and smartphones, they were returning from a private rooftop party. The group occupied the back seats of the bus, laughing loudly and sharing photos on social media when the bus stopped at another station. A middle-aged woman, visibly overweight, struggled to climb the bus steps. She wore a well-tailored navy blue business suit that accentuated her figure. Her graying hair was elegantly tied in a bun, and she carried an executive briefcase. "Look who decided to grace our ride with her majestic presence," Marina whispered to her friends, provoking stifled giggles. Peter, encouraged by the others' reaction, raised his voice slightly. "Do you think she bought 2 tickets? Because one probably isn't enough." The comment made the laughter grow louder. The woman, who was looking for space to steady herself, kept her gaze fixed ahead as if she hadn't heard anything. Other passengers shot disapproving looks at the group, but no one spoke up. "Guys, did you see her outfit? It looks like it's about to burst at any moment," Julia continued, discreetly filming with her phone. Ryan, who had been laughing along, decided to join in. "It must be hard to find clothes her size in stores. Do you think everything is custom-made?" The woman held firmly onto the handrail. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes revealed a mix of dignity and something else, something no one could quite define. In a nearby seat, a man in a grey suit watched the scene with particular attention. Discreetly, he was also filming with his phone, but his expression was different. There was a purpose in his gestures. When the bus stopped again, the woman headed for the door. Before stepping off, she turned and stared at each of the young people for a few seconds. She didn't say a word, didn't show anger or sadness. Her gaze, however, carried a weight that made the laughter stop for a brief moment. As soon as she left, the group resumed their jokes, but something had changed. The man in the grey suit quickly typed a message on his phone, attached the video he had recorded, and sent it to someone. Lucas's phone rang. It was his mother. "Hi, Mum, I can't talk right now," he answered, hanging up immediately. "That's weird," he commented. "My mum never calls me at this time." Marina was busy posting stories on Instagram when she noticed something peculiar. Her latest posts weren't getting the usual engagement. Must be a bug in the app, she thought, not giving it much importance. The bus continued its journey through the city as the sun began to set. No one there could have imagined that this seemingly mundane moment would be the catalyst for a series of events that would forever change the lives of those young people. On the other side of the city, in a luxurious office on the top floor of a commercial building, a middle-aged man was intently watching his laptop screen. The video he had just received caused a serious expression to cross his face. Beside him, a framed photograph showed him standing next to the woman from the bus, both smiling at a charity gala. With calculated movements, he picked up the phone and made 3 short calls. He didn't need to say much. His words were always precise, and his tone, though cordial, left no doubt about his authority. After hanging up, he opened his digital calendar and began reviewing a list of important contacts. The next morning, the group of friends woke up without imagining that their lives were about to change subtly. Marina was the first to notice that something was different. When she checked her social media, she realized she had lost over 1,000 followers overnight. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured to herself, trying to understand what was happening. Her latest posts, usually filled with positive comments, now showed a disturbing silence. The few interactions were from people questioning her absence from an important event she didn't even know she had been uninvited to. Peter, on the other hand, was excitedly preparing for his first meeting at the hospital where he had secured an internship. He put on his best suit, adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, and left confidently. However, when he arrived at the reception, he was informed that there had been a reassessment of the selection process and his position had been cancelled. But how? Everything was set. I signed the documents last week, he argued, incredulous. The receptionist merely repeated that the decision had come from the board and that she had no further information to provide. Peter left the hospital feeling humiliated and confused. Meanwhile, Julia arrived at the law firm where, she interned, her boss, usually friendly, barely greeted her. Mid-morning, she received an email informing her that she would be transferred to the archives department, a clear demotion. Ryan was facing his own crisis. His father's construction company had inexplicably lost $1 million contract that was practically sealed. "Son, is there something I should know?" his father asked over the phone with a worried tone Ryan had never heard before. Lucas, who had always prided himself on his popularity at university, began to notice strange looks from his classmates. During a class, the business ethics professor made a significant pause as he passed by his desk, as if he wanted to say something but changed his mind. During a break between classes, the 5 friends gathered at a cafe near the university. The atmosphere was tense and confused. "Are you guys having a weird day too?" Marina asked, still nervously scrolling through her phone. "I lost my internship without explanation," Peter commented, stirring his coffee listlessly. "My dad is worried. About a contract we lost. He said he got some strange calls," Ryan added. Julia remained silent, thoughtful, until she finally spoke. "Do you think this might have something to do with yesterday?" "With yesterday? What do you mean?" Lucas asked, frowning. "You know, that woman on the bus—" "That's nonsense," Marina interrupted. "It was just a joke. Besides, we don't even know who she is." At that moment, Julia's phone buzzed. It was a notification from an anonymous Instagram profile sharing a video. Her heart froze as she recognized the images. It was the scene on the bus, but not the video she had taken. It was from another angle, clearly showing their faces laughing and making comments. "Guys," her voice trembled slightly, "I think we have a problem." The 5 of them huddled together to watch the video, which was already going viral. The comments were merciless, calling them prejudiced, privileged, and cruel. Negative hashtags were starting to form, and their identities were being exposed quickly. "How did this end up online?" Peter asked, now visibly nervous. "Someone else was filming. Remember that guy in the suit?" Ryan replied, starting to connect the dots. The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of more notifications arriving on their phones. The video was spreading like wildfire, and with it, a wave of negative repercussions they couldn't yet fully grasp. As the week progressed, the bus video reached unimaginable proportions. What started as an anonymous post was now a topic on all the major news portals in the country. "Privileged youths humiliate woman on public transport," the headlines multiplied. Marina, who had carefully built her digital career over 3 years, saw her follower base crumble. The brands she had contracts with began sending emails terminating their partnerships. "We value diversity and inclusion," the messages said, all strangely similar in tone and content. "This is a nightmare," she exclaimed, throwing her phone on the bed. Her mother, a well-known socialite, had cancelled her 21st birthday party, worried about the negative backlash. Peter, who had always dreamed of becoming a doctor, was now facing an even harder blow. The university where he was studying medicine called for an ethics board meeting to evaluate his conduct. The email mentioned behavior incompatible with the values of the medical profession. At home, Lucas faced a deafening silence during dinner. His father, always proud of his son, could barely look at him. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "For our family?" he finally asked, his voice filled with disappointment. Years building a reputation, Julia, the most discreet of the group, discovered that her life was also falling apart. The law firm where she interned not only demoted, Herbert was now considering her dismissal. "She received an interesting call today," her boss commented in English during a meeting, looking at her significantly. Ryan, meanwhile, began to notice a disturbing pattern. Every attempt to control the damage seemed to backfire even more intensely. When he tried to post an apology on his social media, the comments were even more aggressive. "There's something very strange going on," Ryan said during a video call with his friends. "It's like someone is coordinating all of this." "What do you mean?" Lucas asked, adjusting his headphones. "Think about it. We lost contracts, internships, followers, all at the same time. And have you noticed how the responses seem synchronized?" The group fell silent, processing the information. Marina was the first to speak. But who would have that much power? At that moment, Julia, who had been unusually quiet, shared her screen. "I looked into the woman on the bus," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I think I found something." On the screen appeared a photo of a couple at a charity event. The woman from the bus, elegant in a gown, smiled next to a tall, distinguished man. The photo caption identified them: Dr. Albert Mendez and his wife, Helena Mendez, at the annual gala of the New Tomorrow Foundation. Albert Mendez? Peter paled. The Albert Mendez? "Who is he?" Marina asked, confused. Ryan answered, his voice serious. "Only one of the most influential lawyers in the country. My dad has told me about him. They say he has connections everywhere, business, media, politics." "And we humiliated his wife," Lucas completed, running his hands over his face in despair. The discovery hit the group like a bombshell. Suddenly, all the events began to make sense. The lost contracts, the cancelled opportunities, the speed with which the video had spread. "What are we going to do?" Marina asked, her voice breaking. Before anyone could answer, they all simultaneously received an email. The sender was from one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. The subject: meeting urgent. The firm occupied the top 3 floors of an imposing building in the financial district of New York. In the reception area on the 40th floor, the 5 young people waited nervously, each lost in their own thoughts. Marina kept checking her phone, watching her digital reputation crumble in real time. Peter reread for the 10th time the notification from the university's ethics board. Julia compulsively adjusted the lapel of her blazer, while Lucas and Ryan exchanged anxious glances. "Mr. Albert will see you now," the secretary announced, leading them down a corridor decorated with impressionist art. The meeting room was spacious, with a panoramic view of the city. In the center, a dark wood table dominated the space. At one end sat Albert Mendez. His presence was even more imposing in person than in photos. "Please sit," he said, indicating the chairs. His voice was surprisingly soft, but it carried a natural authority that made everyone obey immediately. "I imagine you've already realized why you're here," he continued, his eyes scanning each face in front of him. "Sometimes our actions have consequences we don't foresee, or perhaps we simply don't care about them in the moment." Marina tried to speak. "Mr. Albert, we wanted to apologize." He raised his hand, gently interrupting her. "I'm not interested in empty apologies, Miss Santos. In fact, your recent attempts to apologize on social media were, how shall I put it, less than convincing." Ryan straightened in his chair. "Are you behind all of this? The contracts, the internships?" A slight smile appeared at the corner of Albert's lips. "Me? No, not directly. Let's just say I allowed society to react naturally to your behavior. Of course, some people owe me favors and appreciate my advice, but in the end, it was your own actions that brought you here." "What do you want from us?" Lucas asked, his voice betraying his nervousness. Albert stood up, walking to the window. "Helena, my wife, is the most extraordinary person I've ever known. Brilliant, compassionate, resilient. She's faced prejudice her entire life, but she's never let it define her. When we met, she was already a respected executive, even if some couldn't see past her appearance." Turning to face them, he continued, "What you did on that bus wasn't just a joke. It was a demonstration of something much deeper and more disturbing in our society." Julia, who had remained silent until then, asked, "How can we fix this?" "That's the first intelligent question of the afternoon," Albert replied, returning to the table. "You have 2 options. The first is to continue as you are, trying to defend yourselves, minimize your actions, blame others. In that case, I'll let things take their natural course." The group shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. "The second option," he continued, "is to take real responsibility. Not just empty apologies, but concrete actions to change the situation you created. What kind of actions? Peter asked. Albert opened a folder in front of him. Each of you will receive a specific proposal. Volunteer work, participation in awareness programs, social projects. The choice will be individual, and so will the consequences. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of traffic below. Each of the young people realized they were facing a decisive moment in their lives. You have 24 hours to decide, Albert concluded, standing up. Think carefully. Some choices define who we really are. As they left the room, each carrying a sealed envelope, the group realized that nothing would be the same. The question now was, were they truly ready to change? The cafe in downtown New York buzzed with the usual afternoon chatter. At a secluded table, the 5 friends gathered, each with their still-sealed envelope in front of them. The silence between them was palpable, filled with tension and uncertainty. Marina was the first to speak, her trembling voice breaking the silence. I don't know if I can open this. Ryan, always the most pragmatic of the group, responded, We have to face this head-on. There's no more running away. With trembling hands, each began to open their envelope. As they read the contents, their expressions varied between surprise, fear, and, in some cases, a faint glimmer of hope. Peter was the first to share. They want me to work for 6 months at a public health clinic in the outskirts. No pay. 6 months, Julia exclaimed. Mine asks for a full year of pro bono work on discrimination cases. Lucas, usually confident, looked defeated. I have to participate in a bullying awareness program in public schools and create a social media campaign on the topic. Marina, the social media influencer, laughed without humor. Speaking of social media, they want me to transform my profile. No parties or luxury products for a year, only content about body acceptance and self-esteem. Ryan hesitated before revealing his. I need to coordinate an accessibility project in public buildings, using resources from my father's company. Silence returned to the table, each absorbing the weight of the proposed tasks. This is going to ruin our lives, Marina murmured, running her hands through her hair in frustration. Peter, surprising everyone, including himself, responded, Or maybe it's a chance to do something that really matters. The others stared at him, surprised by his change in attitude. Think about it, he continued. We were so worried about our image, about what others thought of us, that we forgot to worry about who we really are. Julia nodded slowly. Maybe this is an opportunity to grow, to see the world from a different perspective. Easy. For you to say, Lucas retorted. Do you have any idea what my parents will say, what my friends will think? Ryan, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. What if we stop worrying about what others will think? That's exactly the kind of mentality that got us into this situation in the first place. The group fell silent, reflecting on his words. Each of them was at a crossroads, not just in their careers or reputations, but in who they would choose to be from now on. Marina, with tears in her eyes, whispered, I don't even remember why we thought it was funny to mock that woman. What kind of person does that? The kind of person we can choose not to be anymore, Julia replied, her voice gaining strength. As the sun began to set, casting orange hues through the cafe window, the 5 friends found themselves facing the most important decision of their lives so far. Accepting the challenge would mean completely changing their routines, facing the judgment of friends and family, and perhaps discovering sides of themselves they had never explored. Refusing, on the other hand, could mean the end of everything they had built. So what are we going to do? Ryan asked, looking at each of his friends. The answer didn't come immediately. Each of them knew that regardless of the decision they made, nothing would be the same. In the weeks that followed, the lives of the 5 young people changed drastically. Each of them, after much reflection, decided to accept the challenge proposed by Albert Mendez. The transition, however, was far from smooth. Peter, on his first day at the public health clinic, felt the shock of reality hit hard. The line of patients seemed endless, many of them facing health issues exacerbated by lack of resources and information. Doctor, can you help me? Asked an elderly woman, holding a grandchild in her arms. He's had a fever for 3 days and I don't know what to do anymore. Peter hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of responsibility. It wasn't about test scores or impressing professors anymore. It was about real lives. "Of course, ma'am. Let's take a look at him," he replied, guiding her to the examination room. Meanwhile, Julia faced her own challenges at the law firm. Her first pro bono case involved a woman who had been fired due to her appearance. "They said I didn't fit the company image," the client explained, tears in her eyes. "But I know it's because I gained weight after my pregnancy." Julia felt a lump in her throat, remembering her own comments on the bus. "We'll fight for your rights," she stated, with a determination that surprised even herself. Lucas, on the other hand, stood before a class of teenagers at a public school in the outskirts. His hands were sweating as he prepared to speak about bullying. I'm here today because I made a mistake," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "A mistake that made me realize how much our words and actions can hurt others." As he shared his story, Lucas noticed the curious looks turning into genuine attention. For the first time, he felt that his words truly mattered. Marina was facing her own battle on social media. Her first post about body acceptance received a flood of comments, some supportive, others fiercely critical. "Hypocrite," one comment. "Red, now you care about this?" With trembling fingers, she replied, "You're right, I was a hypocrite, but I'm learning and changing. I hope you can give me a chance to show that." Ryan, immersed in blueprints and accessibility projects, found himself fascinated by challenges he had never considered before. "Have you ever thought about how difficult it is for someone in a wheelchair to use a regular water fountain?" he asked a fellow engineer. Together they began redesigning public spaces, considering needs that Ryan had never noticed before. As the days passed, each of the 5 friends began to feel a subtle but profound change. It wasn't easy. There were days of frustration, doubt, and the urge to give up. But there were also moments of discovery, of genuine connection with people they might have ignored or judged before. One evening, reunited at the same cafe where they had made their decision, the group shared their experiences. "It's strange," Peter commented. "I always wanted to be a doctor for the status, to impress people. But now I feel like I'm actually making a difference." Julia nodded. "I get it. Every case I take, every person I help, it's like I'm correcting a little of the harm we caused." "Do you think we'll ever be forgiven?" Marina asked, her voice filled with emotion. Ryan reflected for a moment before answering, "Maybe the question isn't about being forgiven, but about becoming people who deserve forgiveness." Lucas, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "You know what's scariest? Realizing we could have gone our whole lives without this chance to change. We would have stayed, well, who we were on that bus." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't filled with fear or guilt, but with a shared understanding. They were just at the beginning of a long and challenging journey, but for the first time they felt they were on the right path. As night fell over New York, the 5 friends left the cafe with a new perspective. The future was still uncertain, but now they faced it not with fear, but with a newfound determination to make a difference, not just in their own lives, but in the lives of those around them. 3 months had passed since the 5 friends began their journeys of redemption. The winter in New York brought not only the cold, but also a sense of transformation in the air. Peter, now familiar with the routine at the clinic in the outskirts, began to see the results of his work. One morning, as he attended to a young mother and her baby, he noticed something different. "Mrs. Maria, did you follow the breastfeeding instructions we discussed at the last appointment?" he asked, smiling as he saw the healthier baby. "I did, doctor," she replied, proud. "You were the first doctor who really listened to me and explained things. It made all the difference." Peter felt a warmth in his chest that no professor's praise had ever provoked. He was truly making a difference. Meanwhile, Julia was facing her most challenging case yet. She was representing a group of employees from a tech company, all overweight, who claimed discrimination in the workplace. During a tense meeting with the company's lawyers, Julia stood firm. "My clients aren't asking for special treatment. Just respect and equal opportunities, she argued, her voice calm but determined. The opposing lawyer, an older and more experienced man, looked at her with a mix of surprise and respect. Miss Julia, I must admit your argument is compelling. Perhaps we can reach an agreement that benefits both parties. Lucas, on the other hand, saw his anti-bullying campaign on social media gaining traction. One of his videos, where he honestly shared his own transformation experience, went viral. I was the guy who made cruel jokes, who didn't care about others' feelings, he confessed in the video. But I learned the hard way that our words have power. The power to hurt, but also to heal. The comments under the video were a mix of support and skepticism. But what touched Lucas the most was a private message. Dude, your video made me rethink how I treat my classmates. Thanks for being honest and making me want to be a better person. Marina was facing her own challenges. Transforming her influencer profile wasn't easy. She lost followers, contracts, and even some friends who didn't understand her change. But slowly a new audience began to form. One day, while recording a video about self-esteem, Marina received an unexpected visit. Helena Mendez, the woman from the bus, walked into the studio. "Mrs. Helena," Marina exclaimed, frozen in surprise and shame. Helena smiled gently. "I came personally to see the work you're doing. Can I join your video? I think we have a lot to talk about." With tears in her eyes, Marina nodded. This would be the hardest and most important video she had ever made. Ryan, immersed in his accessibility project, discovered a passion he never knew he had. One afternoon, he presented his ideas to a city council committee. "It's not just about ramps or elevators," he explained, enthusiastic. "It's about creating a city where everyone feels welcome and capable." After the presentation, the urban planning secretary approached him. "Young man, your vision is inspiring. We'd like to expand this project to other neighborhoods. Would you be interested in leading the initiative?" Ryan felt a wave of pride and responsibility. It was an opportunity to make a real and lasting impact. That night, the 5 friends gathered again. The atmosphere was different from previous times. There was tiredness in their eyes, yes, but also a light that hadn't been there before. "Do you believe in what we're doing?" Julia asked, breaking the silence. Peter smiled. "Sometimes it feels surreal. But then I see a patient smile and it all makes sense." "We still have a lot to learn and do," Ryan said, "but for the first time I feel like we're on the right path." Marina, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "You know what I realized? We're becoming the people we should have been from the start." As the night went on, the 5 friends shared their experiences, challenges, and small victories. They knew the road was still long, but now they had something they had lacked before, a true purpose. Summer arrived in New York, bringing not only the heat, but also new challenges and revelations for the group. 6 months had passed since the bus incident, and although much had changed, the past still cast its shadow. One sunny morning, Peter arrived at the clinic to find a surprise. A new ultrasound machine had been donated. Curious, he tried to find out more about the donor. It was an anonymous donation, the clinic administrator explained, but it came with a note saying it was for the young doctor making a difference. Peter felt a mix of pride and humility. His work was being noticed, but he knew there was still much to do. Julia, meanwhile, faced an ethical dilemma. Her law firm wanted her to take on a case for a major corporation accused of discrimination. The same type of case she had been fighting against for months. "It's a huge career opportunity," her boss argued. "Think carefully before refusing." That night, Julia couldn't sleep. She knew taking the case could boost her career, but at what cost? Lucas was ecstatic. His anti-bullying campaign had caught the attention of a major TV network, which wanted to do a feature on his story. "It's your chance to reach an even bigger audience," the producer said over the phone. Excited, Lucas immediately agreed. Only later did he realize talking about his past on national TV meant exposing not only himself but also his friends. Marina was facing her own ghosts. Her new content about body acceptance and self-esteem was gaining traction, but also attracting fierce criticism. "You have no right to talk about this. read one particularly aggressive comment. "We all know what you did on that bus." Taking a deep breath, Marina decided to address the issue head-on. She recorded a video openly discussing the incident, its consequences, and her learning process. "I'm not here to hide from my past," she said, looking directly into the camera. "I'm here to show that people can change, learn, and grow." Ryan was about to present the final accessibility project to the city council when he received a call from his father. "Son, I need you to come back to the company," he said, his voice tense. "We're facing a crisis, and I need someone I can trust." Ryan felt the weight of family expectations fall on his shoulders. Returning to the company meant abandoning the project that had become so important to him. On a hot Saturday afternoon, the 5 friends gathered in Central Park. The place, full of families and young people enjoying the day, seemed a world away. From Albert Mendez's office, where it all began. "I have something to tell you," Lucas said, nervous. "The TV wants to do a feature on our story." The silence that followed was heavy. "That means exposing everything again," Marina murmured. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "But maybe it's a chance to show how people can change," Peter argued. "To inspire others to do the same." Julia, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "It's not just that. I got an offer to defend a company in a discrimination case, the same type of case I've been fighting against." Ryan shared his own dilemma about whether to return to his father's company. As each one exposed their challenges, it became clear they were at a crossroads. The choices they made now would define not only their individual futures, but also the impact they would have on the world around them. "You know what's funny?" Marina said, breaking the tense silence. "6 months ago, our biggest concerns were so superficial," Peter nodded. "And now every decision we make seems to have the power to change lives, including our own," Julia added. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues over the park, the 5 friends realized they were facing another decisive moment. The lessons of the past months had transformed them, but the real test was just beginning. "What do we do now?" Ryan asked, his voice filled with anticipation. The answer hung in the air, unspoken but felt by all. They knew that, regardless of the individual choices they made, the bond that united them, forged through mistake, regret, and redemption, would guide them to the right path. The challenge now was to discover what that path would be. Autumn in New York brought with it a breeze of change. Golden leaves danced through the city streets, symbolizing the transformations the 5 friends had undergone in the past months. Now, each of them was about to make decisions that would shape not only their futures, but also the impact they would have on the world. Lucas was backstage at a TV studio, minutes before his live interview. His heart raced as he mentally rehearsed what he would say. "We're on air in 5 minutes, a producer announced. Lucas grabbed his phone and sent a final message to the group. "Whatever happens, we're in this together." At the clinic in the outskirts, Peter faced an ethical dilemma. A patient had arrived in critical condition, needing an expensive treatment not covered by the public system. "Doctor, what can we do?" the nurse asked, worried. Peter looked at the new donated equipment, remembering the anonymous note. At that moment, he made a decision that would change his career forever. Julia was in her office staring at 2 contracts on her desk. On one side, the offer to defend the corporation accused of discrimination. On the other, a request from an NGO to represent victims of prejudice pro bono. Her phone rang. It was her boss, eager for an answer. "Julia, we need your decision now," he pressed. With a deep sigh, she made her choice. Marina was about to start a live broadcast on her social media. Her heart was heavy with recent criticism, but also determined. She had invited Helena Mendez to join in a gesture of reconciliation and learning. "Are we ready?" Helena asked gently. Marina nodded, clicking the Start Broadcast button. Ryan was in the mayor's office, presenting the final version of his accessibility project. Beside him, a stack of documents from his father's company awaited his signature for him to take on a director position. "So, Mr. Oliveira, what will your decision be?" the mayor inquired. Ryan looked out the window, seeing the city he loved so much and knew exactly what he had to do. As the afternoon progressed, each of the 5 friends faced their moment of truth. Their decisions, made individually, would reverberate collectively, sealing not only their destinies but also the course of their redemptions. Lucas, in front of the cameras, spoke with an honesty that surprised even himself. "We're here today, not to glorify ourselves for having changed, but to show that it's possible to recognize our mistakes and work tirelessly to correct them," he said, his voice firm. Peter, at the clinic, mobilized his team. "Let's make this treatment happen," he declared, "and then we'll fight to make sure everyone has access to it." Julia, with steady hands, signed the contract with the NGO. When her boss entered the room, she was ready. "I chose the right side of history," she stated. Marina and Helena's broadcast went viral instantly. "We're here to show that forgiveness and change are possible," Marina said, tears in her eyes. Helena added, "and to remind each of us that we have the power to make a difference." Ryan, in the mayor's office, presented his decision. "I want to see this project implemented in every neighborhood of this city," he declared, pushing the documents from his father's company aside. As night fell, the 5 friends met again at the cafe where it all began. The air was charged with emotion and expectation. "So," Peter began, breaking the silence. One by one, they shared their decisions and experiences of the day. Laughter and tears mixed as they realized how much they had grown and how much they still had ahead. "You know," Julia said, "when all this started, I thought we were seeking redemption. But now I see we found something much greater. A purpose," Ryan completed. Marina smiled. "And the courage to fight for it." Lucas, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "I think I finally understood what Mr. Albert meant. It's not just about fixing a mistake, but about becoming the people we should have been." As the night progressed, the 5 friends realized they were on the threshold of a new chapter. The road ahead would be challenging, but now they had something they had lacked before: each other and the certainty that they were making a difference. The cafe began to close and they prepared to leave. But before they did, they made a silent promise to continue this journey, not just for themselves, but for all those their actions might touch. Outside, the city pulsed with possibilities, and in that moment, 5 young people who once laughed at others' pain were now ready to be agents of change in a world that desperately needed them. A year had passed since that fateful afternoon on the bus. New York awoke to a spring morning, the air filled with promises and possibilities. In different corners of the city, 5 lives that had intertwined in unexpected ways were preparing for a new day. Peter woke up early, as he always did now. He put on his lab coat and headed to the clinic that, thanks to his efforts and his teams, had become a regional reference. On the way, he received a notification. His article on public health in underserved communities had been accepted by an international medical journal. When he arrived, he was greeted by smiling, grateful faces. "Dr. Peter, we got the funding for the new prevention program," his assistant exclaimed. He smiled, remembering how much time and energy they had dedicated to that project. Julia was in her new office, now a partner at a prestigious law firm, specializing in human rights. On her desk, a stack of cases awaited her attention. Each folder represented a life, a chance to make justice. Her phone rang. It was an invitation to speak about workplace discrimination at an international conference. Lucas was preparing for another day of school presentations. His anti-bullying program had expanded beyond his most optimistic expectations, reaching schools across the country. As he reviewed his notes, he received a message from a student. "Your talk changed my life. Thank you for making me believe I can be better." Marina was in her studio preparing for another live broadcast. Her channel, now focused on self-esteem and acceptance, had become a safe space for thousands of people. She smiled as she read her followers' comments, many sharing their own journeys of self-discovery and growth. Ryan walked through the streets of New York, proudly observing the changes his accessibility project had brought. Ramps, audible signals, adapted sidewalks, small changes that made a big difference. His phone buzzed with a notification. The project would be implemented in 5 more cities across the country. At noon, the 5 friends gathered at a restaurant in the city center. The place was decorated for a special occasion, and a discreet banner announced launch of the New Perspective Foundation. When everyone was seated, Albert Mendez entered the restaurant, accompanied by his wife, Helena. Silence fell over the group, a mix of respect and nervousness hanging in the air. Albert smiled, breaking the tension. "Welcome, all of you. I'm impressed with what you've accomplished this past year." Helena, beside him, nodded. "You turned a moment of pain into something extraordinarily positive." One by one, the young people shared their experiences and achievements from the past year. There was pride in their voices, yes, but also humility and a deep understanding of the responsibility they carried. "The New Perspective Foundation," Albert explained, "will be a space to continue and expand the work you started, a place to promote empathy, inclusion, and social change. And we want you to be the directors," Helena added, her voice filled with emotion. The silence that followed was broken by Marina. "A year ago, I never would have imagined being here doing something like this." "None of us would have," Peter agreed. "But now I can't see myself doing anything else." Julia raised her glass. "To the new perspective we've gained on the world and on ourselves. And to second chances," Lucas added. "May we offer them to others, just as we received ours." Ryan looked at each of his friends before speaking. "The journey is far from over. In fact, I feel like we're just beginning." Albert and Helena watched the group with a mix of pride and hope. "You've understood the most important lesson," Albert said, "that our actions have the power to shape not only our lives but the world around us." As lunch continued, the 5 friends felt a renewed sense of purpose. The New Perspective Foundation was more than just a second chance. It was an opportunity to create lasting change. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face it together. Over Sao. The next few months, the foundation began to take shape. Peter focused on expanding healthcare access in underserved communities, using his experience at the clinic to develop programs that addressed systemic issues. Julia took on high-profile discrimination cases, using her legal expertise to fight for justice and equality. Lucas continued his anti-bullying campaign, reaching more schools and inspiring countless students to stand up against cruelty. Marina used her platform to promote body positivity and self-acceptance, creating a safe space for people to share their stories. And Ryan worked tirelessly on his accessibility project, ensuring that public spaces became more inclusive for everyone. Their efforts didn't go unnoticed. The foundation gained traction, attracting support from influential figures and organizations. Media outlets began covering their work, and the story of their transformation from privileged, careless youths to advocates for change inspired many. 1. Evening. As the group gathered at the foundation's headquarters, Albert and Helena paid them a visit. "You've come a long way," Helena said, her voice filled with warmth. "But remember, this is just the beginning. There's still so much to do." Albert nodded. "The world needs more people like you, people who are willing to learn from their mistakes and use their privilege to lift others up." The friends exchanged glances, each feeling the weight of Albert's words. They knew their journey was far from over, but they were ready to keep pushing forward. As the months turned into years, the New Perspective Foundation became a beacon of hope and change. Peter's healthcare initiatives saved lives. Julia's legal victories set new precedents for equality. Lucas's anti-bullying programs transformed schools. Marina's advocacy empowered thousands, and Ryan's accessibility projects made cities more inclusive. Their individual successes were remarkable, but it was their collective impact that truly made a difference. Together, they proved that redemption was possible and that even the deepest mistakes could be turned into opportunities for growth and positive change. One spring morning, 5 years after the bus incident, the friends stood together on the steps of City Hall. They were there to accept an award for their work with the foundation. As they looked out at the crowd, they saw familiar faces: Albert and Helena, their families, and countless people whose lives they had touched. Lucas stepped up to the microphone. 5 years ago, we made a terrible mistake. But that mistake led us to this moment. It taught us the importance of empathy, responsibility, and the power of second chances. We're not here to be celebrated. We're here to remind everyone that change is possible, no matter where you start. The crowd erupted in applause, and as the friends stepped down, they knew their journey was far from over. They had built something meaningful, but there was still so much work to do. As they walked away from City Hall, the sun setting behind the skyline, they felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had transformed their lives and in doing so, had touched countless others. The bus incident, once a source of shame, had become the catalyst for something extraordinary. And so, with hearts full of purpose and minds focused on the future, the 5 friends continued their work, knowing that every step they took was a step toward a better, more compassionate world.